Hey there, everybody. Welcome back for our webinar of the month. Thanks again for being with me. There's lots of people still cranking in, it seems. The numbers are still going up. So thank you. I appreciate everybody being here. Today we're going to get back to my favorite subject, creative post-processing. And we're going to do a couple little different things than what we usually do. We're going to do a kind of combinations of textures and brushes and software and all that kind of fun stuff. So here we go. So I'm going to open up my first image, and as always, most of you know I work with two monitors, so I am opening things from the second monitor because it makes it go a lot faster for me, especially when we're doing the webinars. So this is a file image I just took in the Smokies when we were there at the beginning of April. First thing I want to do to this is brighten it up a little bit. So I did my basic editing already. I usually have that part done before we get to the creative stuff. I'm going to add a brightness and contrast adjustment layer. And I'm going to bring up my brightness a little bit, about 21. And bring up the contrast just a little bit, just about 9, just to give it a little extra pop. So as I was looking at this image and deciding what to do with it, I decided to try using some of my Cosmos textures, which you know I love to use, and they're very versatile, and I use them on a lot of different types of images. So I'm going to bring in 2 on this image. The first one, again, I'm dragging this from the other layer, and by being able to drag it in, it makes it, size at least one direction to match my image. So it just makes it a lot faster. Of course, you can bring them in and just use the move tool to, drag it in over your image onto a separate layer. So this one we're going to do, and I noticed after I opened this, let me turn this up for a second, I've kind of got like a diagonal going across the middle here. So when I looked at this texture, the diagonal is kind of going the opposite direction. So I'm going to flip this one horizontally. So I'm going to go to Edit, Transform, and Flip Horizontal. By using the Edit Transform, it only changes this layer and not the entire image. So I'm going to go ahead and now change my blending mode to multiply, and I left it at 100%. But then I knew I was going to add something else to brighten this up a little bit. So I'm going to go ahead and bring in another Cosmos texture. And these are both from my Cosmos 2 collection. I think I have 4 sets of Cosmos textures in the store. And I'm going to drag this one across. And I also wanted to flip this because this one also is kind of going the opposite direction. So we're going to go back to Edit, Transform, and we're going to flip that one horizontal. And then we're going to change this blending mode to Overlay. And I left it at 100% because I just loved the color that this brought into this image. And then I decided to accent some of these star points a little bit with a brush, or brushes. So I'm going to add a new blank layer, because I always want to do these on a separate layer so I can move them if I want to. And in the notes, this was a set I downloaded from a DeviantArt website. It's called Star and Light Effect Brushes. They're free. A lot of things on that site are free. It's one of my good resources for brushes. So I'm on my brush tool, click on my drop-down menu, and this one I believe is down near the bottom. And it's this, the name when it comes over is Siemens 91, it's Star and Light Effect Brushes. So I'm going to open that up. And I used Big Star 3. So I'm going to double click that. And that's a little too big. So I'm going to set this to like 200 pixels. And I'm just using my bracket keys to make it smaller. You can see it changing up here in the upper left as I use the bracket. And then I'm going to just randomly add kind of over where the points already are. Whoops, but I don't want it black. I want it white. Forgot to change my color, so I'm going to flip my foreground and background and just randomly add some. And if you want to stamp twice instead of once without moving your brush, it will make them a little bit stronger. And just kind of add a few here and there, just to make them pop a little bit. And then I did change the blending mode of this to overlay to kind of make them pick up more of the yellow color and not be quite so white. And that's the first project. I think we had a couple. The site is Deviant Art. I'll type that in here. And it's the, what did I say they were? I already turned my page, sorry. Star and light effects brushes. And if you type that in the search menu, you should see those. And the Cosmos textures are in your note packet. Yes, and in the note, if you purchase the notes, they're on sale for $5 until next Tuesday. You get all of the images I use in the projects, and there's 11 textures I'm going to use today. So you get all of these textures as well with it, plus the PDF, of course, of the notes. So you can recreate these projects along with the replay. Thanks, Kelly. I love these colors too. I thought this came out really cool. And Omar says, I don't have Photoshop. Do I have any webinars using Affinity or PhotoLab? I don't have any webinars on that. I do have Affinity. I don't use it nearly as much as I had planned. I just haven't had time to really get into it as much. But everything is the same process. Things may be, tools may be in a different place, but you can do everything in Affinity that you can do in Photoshop. You can do it in Photoshop Elements. You can do it in On1. Any program that can do layers can do what we're doing here today. I'm not doing anything, that's exclusive to Photoshop. So hopefully that helps. Thanks, Sandy. I'm glad you like it. I made this one my desktop image right now because I really like it. So I'm going to not save that because I already have it saved. So for my next one, I'm going to bring in one. I've edited this in the past. I don't know if it was in a webinar or not. I think I've used it in one of my courses or seminars for camera clubs. But I'm going to go ahead and duplicate my background layer. And I'm going to start by using Smart Photo Editor on this one. So Smart Photo Editor is one of those programs, and I have done a webinar just on that in the past. So you can go back and look on my YouTube or Vimeo channels to find that. But there are two versions of Smart Photo Editor. When I first purchased it, it was standalone program only, and it sells for like $29.95. I think it was probably a couple years ago, came out with kind of a deluxe or pro version that gives you the option of using it as a plugin as well as a standalone program. And I love my plugins because I like working in layers, and it just makes it easier to have everything in one place. So if you have it as a plugin, it would show up under your filter, and it's Anthropics is the company, and then it's Smart Photo Editor.
Tell everybody to make sure they got under.
So, yeah, again, if you're typing into the chat box, if you could just from the drop down there pick everyone so that everybody can see your comments and questions, we'd appreciate it. Otherwise, it defaults to hosts and panelists, and Dave and I are the only ones who see it. It's helpful for everybody. Okay, so the first one I'm going to use, I'm going to go to my effects gallery, and this program is really cool for something that's so inexpensive. It's got a ton of versatility. Most of the presets in here are created by users of the program. So people like you and me, you could come in here, you could create a preset, and you can save it and share it. And every time that you close the program, like the first time you're using it, it will update the kind of menu of all of these presets. So there's constantly new things being added. So the one, I'm going to type it in the search bar because I know I wrote down the name of it. And this one is called Sketchy Watercolor Painting And let's see if it finds it. So here we go. And there are a few with that name, and the one that I want is by Arwen. So we're going to use this one. I'm going to say, come on. Okay. And I'm going to start with this. And some of them have adjustments where you can change parts of it. You can rotate, like this one has a color overlay on it. So that's what that circle is for. Some you can stretch out the areas, and then you can come in and make changes as well. And each preset will be different. But I'm going to apply this without any further changes. So I'm going to go to File, Save and Return will take me back to Photoshop. And that's my first layer. And of course, you know I'm going to do more to this because that's what I do. So we're going to add several textures to this one. The first one, and these are, of course, all of mine. This is from my Grunge 4 collection. And I'm going to rotate this. I'm going to rotate it 90 degrees. So I'm going to put my cursor outside the corner. And I'm just going to, if I hold the Shift key, it will go in 15-degree increments. So it makes it level when I get to the top. And I'm going to stretch this out. And we're going to change this one to overlay. And I left it at 100% opacity. And then we're going to bring in another texture. This one is called Faded Border. This is from my Grunge 3 collection. I'm also going to rotate this one. Stretch it out. And we're going to change this one to overlay. Trying to read notes and type at the same time. And I also left this one at 100%, which I don't very often do leave the opacities at 100, but it worked for both of these. And then I'm going to bring in a Cosmos texture, a different one than the other two we used. This one's from my Cosmos 1 collection. We're going to add a little more yellow back to this. We're going to change this one to Multiply. And I lowered it just a teeny bit to about there. And then I wanted to mask some of this texture off of the layer. I wanted it to be more on the background and not the flower. So I'm going to add a layer mask, grab a hard round brush. Yep, we're on a hard round. And I'm just going to quickly paint this in, and then I'm going to lower the opacity of the mask because I want to leave some of the color there. I don't want it to be completely gone, but it's easiest to paint it this way, and I'm not doing a really good job of painting. I kind of colored outside the lines a little bit, but that's okay. We can fix that. That's what we like about masking. And I'm going to make it small enough to fit in that little part of the petal there. And might as well grab this one. I am using a mouse. I don't typically use a tablet. I do have them, but I've gotten so used to the mouse that that's what I use 99% of the time.
You don't have time to train yourself.
Yes, Dave says I don't have time to train myself to use the tablet. I had an older one I used more often, but the new one I have is one of the smaller ones, and I don't like it quite as much. And I'm also going to mask that part so then I can make my brush a little bigger. I could have probably used just select subject to make this quicker, but you know.
Smart photo editor, somebody's asking us an app, it's not an app, it's a software you have to download.
Smart Photo Editor is not in the App Store. It's not a phone app. It is software for your computer. So you have to go to their website. If you Google Smart Photo Editor, it's by Anthropics is the company that makes it. And then you can, I do have an affiliate code if you want to go to my website. I do get a little bit of credit if you purchase through my link. So you can go to I have a page for all of my affiliates and companies that I work with. And Okay, so, and I learned this just recently. I don't know why I never knew this before. So once you're inside a mask and you want to change the density of this mask, if you double click inside the mask, it brings up this box and you can change. Right now the density is at 100%. You can change it by moving the slider, and then it's great because now we've brought back some of that. And it's like, how did I never know this before? It was like one of those things that, you know, you can't know every little thing in Photoshop. I know I surely don't. And I learned this from a webinar I was watching somebody else do. I was like, that's pretty cool. So that's very handy. And so there we have it. So we have just a little bit of yellow in the flower, you know, more color on the background. Some people might want it the other way, maybe more color on the flower and less on the background. You can always do that too. But that's my version of this project. Yeah, I know, Vicki. Isn't that cool? Something new. I'm always learning something new. It's what keeps it all fun and interesting. We never know everything there is to know. So there we go. So for our next one, this is a place probably about 40 minutes or so from us. Dave met the gentleman online who purchased this old mill. It's called Bab's Mill. And there's a waterfall out behind it as well. And he did open it up and let us go in. I had to be very careful because as you can see, it's very sinking over here, and the floorboards on that side of the building are not in very good shape, but he's hoping to possibly restore it. So I'm going to do some creative stuff to this. And buildings like this, I like to do kind of like make it look like an old photo. So this one I used the Nick collection. And I went into Silver Effects Pro. And as soon as it decides to open, we're going to go into the 25th anniversary. They added 10 new presets in here. That was like version 3, I think, of the program. And I went down to Street, Old Vintage. Come to one of our workshops, Vicki, and we can arrange that. Come do a and Kate. Yeah, we find lots of cool places, and that's what our Barnes and Backroads workshops are all about. Is finding, and you know, I have routes planned out with lots of cool barns and old houses and all kinds of neat stuff. I have a workshop starting tomorrow afternoon, and we're going to go on Friday to a prison. It's a couple hours from here, but we're going to take a little road trip. And it's a place that's open to the public a few days a week for tours. And but you can roam at your own pace as well. So we are going to check it out. And that might be adding, yeah, they have a distillery, they said, and a restaurant they call it the Warden's Table. And it's like in the middle of nowhere. And it was, I forget who it was, one of the famous people was imprisoned there for a while. And yeah, so it should be cool. So watch for some pictures from that. So this was what I modified. Don't forget your jail. Thanks, Pat. Pat Rex says, don't forget my get out of jail card when I visit. Yes, I might need that. It says make sure you're out in time or you might get locked in overnight. So we will make sure we are there. We're planning to get there when they open. And there's a couple other buildings on the grounds too as well. So that's step 1 that I did here. And then I'm going to add this light tan texture. But after I added it, I really didn't want the color. So I'm going to show you how to modify this and only add the texture without the color from the texture. So first I'm going to change this to a black and white before I even start changing blending modes. So I'm going to add a black and white adjustment layer. And I brought the reds, where did I go? This way. darkened them a little bit and brightened the yellows. And here, I brought that down to like 12. And then what I want to do is clip this adjustment layer to my texture. And you can either do that with a Control-Alt-G or Command-Option-G on a Mac. Or the other way is if you just hold your Alt or Option key and put the cursor between the two layers, you get that little arrow and a box symbol, and then you click and it does the same thing. So you can see with this arrow, it's saying that this adjustment is only affecting this layer. So it hasn't changed my layers underneath because I don't want the whole thing to be black and white, just my texture. So now I can go back to my texture layer. And I'm going to change my blending mode to color burn, which is going to darken it, and then bring back the opacity to about 40%. So you can see that added a little more drama, a little more contrast, even though it's still got that kind of faded look, but it just made it stand out a little bit more. And then I decided to fade the edges. I'm going to use a white vignette. So I'm going to highlight this layer because I want to add a layer above it, a blank layer. I'm going to fill this layer with white. So I'm going to do an Alt backspace on a Mac. That would be Option Delete. Grab my the elliptical marquee tool, and I'm going to put my cursor almost up to the corner. Click, drag to the lower right corner. This is a great way to do a vignette, whether it's black or white, on any image without using other software. And then we need to go to our Select, Modify, and we're going to feather this selection so it doesn't have a hard edge. And I usually do the 250, say OK. And I'm just going to hit my backspace key, and it will knock out that center. Control or Command D will deselect it. So instead of just lowering the opacity, like I typically would with a vignette, it kind of has like a cloudy look with the white. But if I change my blending mode to overlay, it interacts with the actual photo. So it's like the trees are fading there. And then I changed the opacity. I made it about 75 or so. So you can just see a little bit of the trees fading off the edges, which I really liked. And it also kind of reduced the effect of the dirt that was down here. It just kind of fades away. Amy says, Dave, your smoker wants your attention. Yes, it does. He's been smoking a brisket since about 3 o'clock this morning. He was up, and it will be ready when this webinar is over. So it's when it gets to the temperature fluctuates, sometimes it starts beeping at him.
Yeah, I turned the sound down.
So he said he turned the sound down on his phone, so it won't keep beeping at us. So there we have it. So we went from this color image to the sepia to that. And I really like the effect of that fading, edges there.
Old-timey look.
So yeah, it gives it that old time look to an old building. So it's kind of appropriate, I think. All right, so let's close that one. And thanks for the kind words. Glad you guys liked that one. I did too. I thought it came out pretty cool. So next we're going to do, and this is one of the barns on our workshops as well. It's called Clemmer Farms. We've gotten to meet these folks, and they're great people. They've invited us onto the farm many times. Sometimes when we go there, if it's during the week, they both have other jobs, the husband and wife and the son, because nowadays you can't really make a living farming, but they have like 600 acres, several hundred cattle. They raise beef cattle. And we were there last spring. We went over when they were doing the vaccinations for the day, which was interesting because I had never seen that done. Yes, Omar, my webinars are recorded and they're on my YouTube and Vimeo channels. And all of my webinars, this is number 24. I started in March of 2020, and the only ones I don't do them are the months we have our online conference, because I just have too much to do for the conference. So there won't be a webinar next month. Speaking of the conference, it's coming up at the end of next month. And lots of people have been signing up, so check it out. It's only $39 for 2 whole days, 13 sessions, 8 speakers, lots of creative techniques. So check it out. It's on the website. It's been in the blog. Yeah, every blog, it's got some info on it. And Dave's going to pick a number at the end, and we're going to give away a free entry too at the end. So stay tuned at the end of the webinar. Alrighty, so this one was one of those days when it was just a nothing sky, really blah, gray, but we're going to change that. So you may have seen also in the blog a new collection from my friend Gavin McLeod, who has it's 3,000 skies set for only $24, and it's available till May 31st. And I'm going to use a couple from that set in this. So I'm going to open up Luminar Neo, and you can do this in Photoshop. I just happen to like Luminar more for this kind of stuff. So I'm going to go to my Skylum, Luminar Neo. And there's also a sale going on Neo if you don't have it yet. So check that out in the blog. They just introduced an update last week, which is amazing considering they're based in the Ukraine, and these people are still able to push out all these updates. And it now has masking, AI masking, so it can recognize subjects and things. It's really very cool. If I have time, I'll show you that at the end of the webinar. So let's go first here. I'm going to start with a preset, and I'm going to go into the scenery collection. And this is one of my favorites. It's Pleasing Touch. It's just a nice overall, adds a little color, some detail and stuff. And then we can go into our edit, and you can either fine tune a preset or, you know, go ahead and do some other things. So here I'm going to go down to our Sky AI, and I'm going to click into Sky Selection. And there are that are in here, and you can purchase other kits from their website as well. I also have Sky sets on my website. And then from the drop down, these are all ones, they have, it's a yearly subscription. It's called Luminar X membership, and each month you get free skies and or free presets, you know, more of the presets and different things that are pretty cool. So I have that as well. And then they had done some thank you groups, so that's why I imported them. And then I've also have a bunch of my own skies. But today we're going to go to custom. And you can see I've already have one in here, but I'm going to add another one. I'm going to show you 2 versions of this particular image with 2 different skies. And I'm going to go to, let's go to my webinar. And we're going to use, actually that's the one I want to use first.
Bob all wants to know about the sky.
And if you go to today's blog, Robert, there is a link in there for the skies. And it'll be in the blog a few more times. I think I put it in the newsletter too that I sent out. So if you got either or, you would have that information. And so this is the sky I'm going to use, and we're going to make a few changes here. So I'm going to go into my sky orientation, and I decided the horizon wasn't quite meeting here, so I'm going to move my horizon down a little bit just so that it blended better. 15. And then under mask refinement, this is where we can also, if it doesn't quite mix like with the tree branches, if you get like haloing in there, this is where you can adjust that. So I brought global, but you don't want to go too far when you're moving these sliders and around tree branches, because then your tree branches start to disappear. So keep an eye on that, and you can zoom in if you need to look at what you're doing better. And then fix details, I went all the way up. And what that's going to do is fix any of those, you know, broken branches and things. And then what I like about the Luminar skies is you can see how it's kind of toned the rest of the image to match the sky. It's not just replacing the sky, but you can also fine tune that if you want to. I'm going to up the strength of that relighting even more to really make it, you want it to look believable. You don't want your sky to go, oh, well, that was a fake sky. That couldn't possibly have been there. And then the saturation of it as well. And there you have it. And then apply will, hang on one second, babe. Yep. Hit apply, and that will take you back to Photoshop. What was the question, dear?
When is the early bird after the conference?
The early bird for the conference is going to end usually a couple weeks before the conference. I try to, my goal is not that I want to charge people more, but it's a lot more work right at the last minute trying to get everybody to sign up for the Zoom on time and all that. So to give myself a little cushion, I started doing that with the last conference to encourage people to sign up early. So the sooner the better. It is all recorded, and you'll have 60 days to watch all of the videos again, or if you miss any, you can, you know, catch them for the first time or watch replays for the 2 months. And there also includes speaker notes and a goodie bag, and we have door prizes and all kinds of good stuff. So it's a real bargain for the $39.
Watch for 2 months.
Yep. Plus you get to watch it for 2 months. Yes, I did say that. So there you have it. That's our first version of this image. And I'm going to do it with a different sky, just so you can see how different skies can affect your images. So I'm going to hide that one for a second and duplicate this again. And then we're going to go back into our Neo. Neo. And we're going to use, this one's going to be a little less dramatic, but I think it's still a really pretty sky. And you can get as creative as you want with this kind of stuff. So I'm going to go to my presets again, my scenery, click on this one, and then go to my edit, sky selection. My cursor to catch up here. Sometimes when I'm online, things do funny things. And let's go to custom. And this time I'm going to bring in a different one. We're going to use this one. This is also from Gavin's set. And give it a few seconds to think about it. There we go. I thought this one was really cool with the little crescent moon in it. So we're going to go into our, where do I want to go? I want to adjustments. Let's try. I have Shift Edge, but I don't think that's what I meant in here. Nope, we don't want to go that way. Horizontal. That must be it. Well, no. Wrote myself notes and not sure what I wrote. Can't remember what I wrote. Let's bring that down a little bit. There we go. 17. And let's go to our brightness. And I'm going to bring that down a little bit. So this is changing the brightness of the sky so I can more match my image. And then I'm going to go to, oh, I know why it's different, because I did this one in Photoshop. Oops. I was going to show you the two different ways. That would be why. I'm like, why are these words different? All right, so let's go to edit. And we want sky replacement. So you can see the difference of how the Photoshop one does it. All right, so let's choose our sky. That one's pretty, but that's not the one I wanted. If I go under my skies, let's see. Gavin skies, afterglow. That one. Okay, so that's the one we want. And there it is again. So now we can, oh, now it makes sense. So we're going to shift the edge a little bit to bring it up. And bring my brightness down. And my lighting adjustment to 86. And color adjustment to 55. And there you have it. So I like to output to new layers because, of course, you know, I love working with my layers. So we're going to say, okay. And the Photoshop one will come in with the sky grouped and shows you all the layers. So if you wanted to refine the masking or any of the adjustments that you made in there, that is an option to do here, which you can't do with the Luminar. So that's the one advantage of the Photoshop one. Again, I just happen to like Luminar and I like using it. So I tend to go that way first. Pat says, I think I will try turning day into night and adding the Milky Way above it after I downloaded your notes. Absolutely. There are some Milky Way skies in Luminar, probably some in Photoshop as well. And there's a whole bunch in Gavin's set as well. With some really cool ones. So yeah, definitely post it and share it, or your own, because you're out in the Southwest where you probably get some good Milky Way shots. So we have that version, and then we had that version. So you could decide how subtle or how dramatic you want to go with your skies. Joan says, is it hard to get Gavin's skies? Nope. If you go to, oh, Dave put the link up a little bit. And if you go there, they just are, they're JPEG files. He has them in Google Docs, and you'll just download the various folders and then unzip them. Yeah, 3,000 skies. There's a whole ton of them. And there's some really cool stuff in there. You've got bright blue ones and puffy clouds and, you know, the lightning and all kinds of cool stuff. Do I plan a future Luminar webinar in the future? Probably, because they're coming out with so many new changes. Probably later in the summer, I will do that. So stay tuned for that. So if you've seen some of my stuff in the past, some of my creative work, you know that I like to get inspiration from other places. And one place I like to search for inspiration is in Pinterest. And that's where I found this image. And I thought it was really cool. And if you're on Pinterest, follow me under Meredith, look for me under Meredith Images, and you can follow me. And I have a board called Inspirations. So you can see a whole bunch of the things that I've saved. And this was one I thought was rather cool. So I decided to try and create my version of this type of an effect. So we're going to start with, I didn't have that particular leaf, but I did have this leaf that I've used before. This was just an iPhone shot. I actually took this on one of our workshops last fall. I just put it on a picnic table that was there. It was one of those plastic picnic tables, so it was just kind of a little dirt, add a little grunge to it. And then I created a silhouette from that. I just selected it, and I'm going to open this separately. And you can see it's just on a transparent background. I like to put white backgrounds sometimes behind things because the checkerboard is hard on the eyes. So if you look closely, like some of this leaf was a little ragged here, so I just used a brush and kind of filled it in, made some nice points there, but the rest of it is just this shape and fill it with black was all I did. So we're going to use this as our base, and I'm going to add some textures below it. So I'm going to click on the white background, and I'm going to bring in my first texture. This is from my Grunge 8 collection. Oops. And I was just thinking about it today. If you keep an eye on the blog and the newsletter, I'm going to be doing a 1 week only Memorial Day texture sale with all my textures and brushes and things 50% off. So stay tuned, because it will probably start next week sometime and run through like the end of the month or something. So that's our first texture. And the other reason to have the white background is if I decided that I wanted to lower the opacity of this texture, by having the white layer there, I could do that to make it lighter, where if the white wasn't there, it starts to become transparent, which doesn't work very well. So that's another reason to kind of have a white background when you start layering textures that are not over an image. So for now, we're going to leave that at 100%. And while that one's fairly similar to that inspiration piece, I'm going to, of course, dress mine up even more. We're going to bring in another texture. This is from the Grunge 4 collection. I love my grungy textures. And we're going to leave the blending mode at normal, but I'm just going to pull the opacity way down to like 15% to just add a little more color. So it's not a true green. Now it's kind of a lighter bluish green. And then I went back to my green layer and I did lower that opacity. So again, this is why the white layer is good. I brought that down to 79%, which brightened up that combination. And then I'm going to bring in one more, my grungy gray, also from the Grunge 8 set. And stretch that one. And we're going to change this one, oops, should be on top of the blue. Change that to multiply. And then bring down the opacity to about there. So now I want to select the leaf layer to make it active. And I'm going to bring in the image that I want inside of this. And we're going to clip these two together. So I'm using a barn image, surprise. And I'm going to lower the opacity of this temporarily just so I can see the shape through it. So I can see where I'm going kind of when I angle this. And I'm going to angle this to kind of match the direction of the leaf. And I'm going to make it bigger to kind of fill this in a little bit. Kind of like that. And yeah, about there should work. And we're going to take care of that in a second. So I am going to move this over just so that part is covered. Yeah, and then we're going to fix that top part. Yeah, and the logo's off the corner, which is fine. I would typically use one that I didn't have the logo on, but I grabbed this from a finished file. And I have this printed on metal hanging in our dining area, which looks really, really nice. So now we want our image to take on the shape of the leaf. And the way we clip that black and white adjustment to our texture before, I'm going to do the same thing here. So I'm going to hold my Alt key and click between those layers. So now that shape will only show up where the leaf is. So now to fill in that part, I'm going to go to my image layer. I'm going to click on the polygonal lasso tool, and I'm going to make a selection from the sky. I don't want to grab this really dark edge here, but I'm going to kind of just grab kind of around here. And then I'm going to do a Control J to put that on a separate layer. Now if I grab my move tool, I can move that. And then I'm going to stretch it. Whoops. Let's go that way. And it's only going to show a little bit, so I'm not too worried that I'm stretching it out because it's going to blend when we're done. So I'm going to hide that really dark part there. And then also do the clipping to that layer. And then you could merge these two together if you wanted to. If you just highlight these two layers and do layer, merge layers, so that will only merge the ones you've highlighted. And then I can take my healing brush if I wanted to kind of blend that edge there a little bit better. And there you go. And that would do it.
In the notes, it's not in there.
Somebody said I'm missing the barn in the notes. Okay, well, I'll have to add that in again. Sorry. I will.
Link to me and I'll send it, put it up there. I can grab it here.
Well, I have to put it in Dropbox. I can't give. There's no link for it until I put it in Dropbox. I will. I'll put a link for the barn image in the email you'll get from Zoom tomorrow. So if you already have the notes, you'll be able to just pick it up from there, and then I'll add it to the Dropbox file when we're done. Sorry about that. Usually I catch everything when I'm copying into a separate folder, but I guess I missed that one. And let's see. And in one of your monthly Zooms, could you go into all the different panels you have in Photoshop? Sure. I do talk about some of them as I go sometimes, like I think you're talking about like these in here. I just have a lot of things docked, which you can do, like these are my brush settings. So instead of having to go to the window brush settings, which opens the same panel, you can you can drag them and dock them over here. So I've done that. But yeah, that's a good idea. I can definitely do part of a webinar on that. No, John, I didn't order it from Michael's. I had actually won the print from our New England Camera Club Council conference as a door prize. And I don't remember the name of the company. I would have to look it up, but they did a beautiful job on it. It's 20 by 30 inches, so it's nice and big, and it looks really, really pretty. So, oh, third-party panels like these here. Yes. Okay. Gotcha. Okay, so to finish this off and give it some depth and separate it from our background, I'm going to do some layer styles. So we're on our leaf layer to make that active. I'm going to double click over here in a blank area, and that will open our layer styles box. And the first thing I'm going to do is a bevel and emboss. So anytime you're using any of these, if you click the check box, make sure you also highlight that row to get the proper tools in the center. And I might remember what I did when I was writing the notes. So I'm inner bevel, smooth, depth 126, 125, somewhere around there, direction up, size 24, and I softened all the way to 15. And you can see how that kind of gave it like a little bit of a 3D edge there. And then I also, my page, want to do a drop shadow. And we're going to use a blend mode of normal, color black, opacity we're going to bring down to like 22. Angle, I usually use 135, but this one I went with 150. It just seemed to work better with the leaf. Distance, 36. Spread, 40. And size, 84. And I wanted it to be a little bit bigger, but soft. And then we'll say okay. And then I decided to brighten the barn layer just a little bit. And I did already clip these together prior to do the sky, or you could have done this now if you didn't already. But we're going to add a brightness and contrast layer. We're going to clip that to that layer. So let's turn that off. So I'm going to do my Alt, because I only want to adjust the barn and not everything. So we can go in here, and I just took the brightness up a little to like 22. So just make that a little brighter. And of course, you could use any image you want. If you wanted to do something more like that, I probably could have found lots of like tree shots and things. You could create something. I would say this is a painting, but I thought it was a cool effect. And that's my version of it. Alrighty. So what was I going to do when at the end I said? I forgot. No. You guys got to remind me. I said I would do something at the end, and I forgot what it was because I do have some time. Luminar. No, what was I going to do? Oh, I was going to show you the masking. Yes, thank you. Alrighty. See, I knew there was something I wanted to do. All right, so I'm going to close this one. And we'll say now, I'm just going to open the barn image for an example. I'm going to duplicate it. I always duplicate before I go into like Luminar and Topaz especially, because they don't make their own layer the way that Nick does. So I always want to keep my original underneath. So if we go to our filter and go to Luminar Neo, and we're going to go up to, I got to remember now, enhance, and then go to masking. And then you go to AI mask. This is the new one. So they have brought back, when they released Neo, they didn't have the masking feature in here yet. So this was, again, released just last week. So now if it's under enhance and you go to masking, and then if you go to AI mask, you're going to see these little dots in 3D things. It's looking and analyzing the image, and it can recognize skies, water, buildings, people, man-made objects. And here's the things that it found: water, architecture, flora, sky, mountains, and natural ground. I guess they're considering that a mountain in the background. But let's say we wanted to mask the building. So if you click architecture, it did a pretty good job. It didn't quite get all of it. It got a little too much. So you could fine tune it, but it does a pretty good job of getting you started at masking much quicker. So we could turn that one off. Let's try. And I also have textures on here, which is probably confusing it. And there's their sky. So again, it's not perfect because of the effects I have on here, but if I were doing a sky replacement, I know their sky replacement tool would do a much better job there. Let's see how it does on water. Yeah, it didn't quite catch that because it's dark, but again, with the textures, it confuses it. You wouldn't do it on a finished image. You would be doing it on your, image that you've just started processing. But that, excuse me, I have the hiccups. That is how, and you can select more than one thing. So if I wanted to select the sky and the water, you could do both. And then when they're highlighted like this, any adjustments you make would only affect those areas. So if you come in here and then go, sorry, I should have gone to adjustments. If I wanted to accent them, it's only going to change those areas that were highlighted, that are masked, not everything else. Or you can invert the mask if you wanted to adjust everything except what's masked. So hopefully that makes sense. You can see this got much brighter up here because I did the sky enhance. but that's the basics of how it works. So I've tried it on a few images and it's done a really good job. And that is why I like Luminar, and they keep adding these really cool features. So there you have it. Any other last questions? Let's see.
Donna Brown's the winner of the.
Okay, Dave just picked a name out of the list of everybody in here, and Donna Brown, you have one entry to our conference. So I will email you. And if you by chance are already signed up, you can either have the next conference or a store credit for the amount. So I'm writing your name down and I will email you, and you are welcome, Donna. Yes, good point, James. There's a demo of the Luminar masking by Vanelli under the Luminar coffee break. So if you either just search it or go to the Skylum website and go to Luminar, I know you can link to the coffee breaks. They do daily, like hour-long sessions with different techniques and sometimes with guest speakers. I know I've done a couple of them at, demonstrating textures and stuff in there. So you can catch, they're all recorded, so you can catch all of those too.
Sandy Creek. Ask people anybody in the New England or New York area coming this way wants to come to workshop.
Sandy Creek, it was in Long Island, has been wanting to come down to Tennessee for one of our Barnes workshops, but she doesn't want to drive by herself. If there's anybody in the New York or New England region who would like to join her, let me know and I'll get you guys hooked up, because I know Sandy's been wanting to come down since last year. And yeah, from where we lived in Southern Connecticut down here is like a 12-hour drive. So from Long Island probably be about the same, because you have to come from off the island and then down. But if anybody would like to come down in the fall or next spring, let me know and I'll get you guys hooked up. Thanks so much, everybody. I appreciate your being here as always. I will, like I said, I will put a link to that image in the Zoom message that will go out tomorrow with the link to the recording. And if you already have the notes, go back into the Dropbox file in about an hour and I'll have that added in there as well. Thanks again. We'll see you all soon. Have a good night. Take care.